Three teams gave each other the worst units and farmed on the Sacred Stones and then raced through the entire game using only those units. This is what we call a SOYO draft. SOYO meaning screw over your opponent. The entire race is over 3 hours long and is worth watching, but here is a recap of how badly it went, some of the fun stories to come out of it, and some of the strategies that each of the teams had going into it. But you should watch the whole thing if you have time, and to do that you should go over to Vicious Sal's YouTube or Twitch channel. That is what I did to create this recap. So just so you know, this is not a mecha face reveal, this is Sal. He streamed the entire event, provided mostly neutral commentary, occasionally hopping into each team's individual voice chats to check up on them, which added a lot to the race and made it feel a lot more like watching a sport. But for this recap, we will start with the drafting process. Normally in a draft race, we've got one person drafting for themselves, and here we had each team drafting for another team. And so there are 3 teams of about 4 members each. You've got 5 Fanged Dolphins, abbreviated as FFO. You got My Dart Will Go On, abbreviated as Dart, and there's Deliberate Bunga, abbreviated as DB. 5 Fanged Dolphins picks for Dart, Dart picks for DB, and DB picks for FFO. Deliberate Bunga is my team. I am joined during the race by Klaire and Pyrope, and each of us are playing a section of the game. Geene was also part of my team, but he wasn't participating in this race. I will try to give the other teams a more proper introduction when the race starts, but for now you should know that 5 Fanged Offense is Castle's team, and My Dart Will Go On is Gluecks' team, and they both streamed their perspectives on their own Twitch channels. So, the draft. Each team gets 5 picks handed to them from another team, and after that the draft stops, and you're only allowed to use the units that you get, plus the units that are free for everyone. So that would be Erica, Ephraim, Orson, Tethys, Myrrh, and Cyrene. Why these units are free, we'll get into the more specifics later, but for now just know that the units that are forced onto maps like Erica and Ephraim are usually free. Now in a regular draft where you pick your own team, the first rounds are the most important ones, and the best units are picked first. So that would be units like Franz and Vanessa and Seth, units that will not come up in this draft at all. But in a SOYO, it's the reverse. You pick the worst units first, and so the first rounds are the least significant, and it'll just build up to the most important rounds of all, which are at the end. So the drafting order went as follows. First up, FFO gave Dart Marissa because Marissa doesn't do anything. She costs time to recruit and never makes up for it. So this is basically a void unit that you'll never get to use. I was expecting the next unit to be picked here that Dart would give to us, which would be Ewan, because Ewan is almost like Marissa. This has no significance at all. But they gave us La Rochelle instead. I don't know exactly why, but it didn't really matter that much because we never ended up deploying La Rochelle. But technically, you could have a mounted healer like healing people. Because we were planning on going Ephraim route, we thought it would be nice to have a healer. La Rochelle unfortunately cannot use Restore in Chapter 14, the Grotto Keep map with all the Berserk staffs, so that one is out. But, I mean, at least we could deploy her to recruit Renak and save ourselves 10 golds from having to do it with Ephraim instead if we wanted to. But that meant that our planning was a little bit off, but we gave them Ewan because he was our plan for if we got to this position. And then the most units that come after this are either units that can't really do a whole lot overall in the game, need a lot of training to get good, which costs a lot of time, so usually it's not worth to train more than one unit, and we're probably going to get at least one unit that's better than the units that we're going to pick around here. Or the units that join late and don't have much time to contribute, but at least they can do it at a higher level without any training, so they save more time. So the units in the former category are like Natasha, Joshua, Mulder, Colm, Nimi. Units that join early can maybe become good, but are definitely suboptimal to train. And units that join later that are not as good are like Renak, Noel, even units like Saleh and Garrick, I guess technically fall in this category, but those are way too good generally, so we don't really consider them viable. Inez is another good example of this. But we gave him one of the early units, we gave him Natasha. Natasha cannot be fed XP aggressively like a combat unit. She just heals for like 11 or 12 XP and it takes way too long to raise, so Natasha can't do anything except like be deployed. Another good use of a unit that joins early but doesn't really have the ability to contribute in combat is to bait status staves like Berserk and Sleep, but since those enemies tend to target people that have weapons equipped, that also doesn't work for Natasha unless she's promoted, in which case you already spend a bunch of time doing that, so overall, Natasha just doesn't contribute a whole lot. They gave us Mulder probably with the same logic. I think Mulder's a fair bit better because he does have C-Staff, so he will have the ability to restore, and we actually use this quite a bit, as you'll see later on. He's a very funny, interesting pick. I think because of what comes after, it makes some sense that they gave us Molder here. It's really interesting to see the different approaches by the different teams here. I don't know exactly what the logic was behind giving us Molder, but we were really pleasantly surprised that we got him this early in the draft too. Like, I wasn't even thinking that he was going to be here until round 3 or 4 maybe. So very interesting. In hindsight, I totally get it, but what the hell. I didn't expect to get a useful unit in round 2 of a SOYO draft, but here we are. Next up, the next picks are going to be some late joiners that I would have loved to have, but unfortunately FFO felt forced to get into Dark instead. They are Renak and Null. Both of these are nice because they can contribute in one of the hardest maps in the game, no matter what route you go, which is the desert map, chapter 15, Scorched Sand. Both of these units are available no matter which route you go, and can help route the map earlier, perhaps avoid reinforcements or pick them off if they do spawn. They're not good in combat, and they probably won't see much use afterwards, but they're still a net positive for your team if you have them, which is more than you can say for most of these units. These are like neutral. Like, if a unit doesn't help you to recruit them, you probably won't get them at all, but these are units that join for free and help you for free. Next up is a very interesting pick in Nami, which was given to us by Team My Dart Will Go On. Nami was like a kind of a secret sleeper agent unit that some people consider to be like, it's just a early flunker like Natasha that you don't really do a whole lot with. And some people, like Castle, part of Team 5 Fanged Offense, say, yeah, Nami is actually a really good carry. You can, if you want to, train Nami in the early chapters, and then you get an Orion's Bolt after chapter 6, you can promote her to Ranger, and suddenly you have a mounted unit that can use both swords and bows. Most relevant here are swords because they can fight on enemy phase more often, and start killing things pretty handily too. Nami's stats are not very good. Her strength particularly is suffering. Her speed, she also doesn't double at base, but she will eventually grow enough speed to double most likely. One of the coolest things that I heard about Nami that I didn't know before this race is that Nami can promote into a Ranger before chapter 7, like I said, and Rangers can walk on water. So just like Erica and Colm and Ross if he's a pirate, you can skip a huge portion of the map by just walking through that river. Now Erica can do this herself, but Nami makes it a fair bit faster. She could like shoot down the mage that would attack you otherwise. It's pretty cool. But we had no training with Nami, no practice, and we didn't really consider it a viable option in our preparation, and so we didn't feel comfortable like trying to do it in practice when we had, you know, better ideas. And when I say in practice, I mean when actually doing the race, like in a practical sense. So this was just a flunky pick for us. In that sense, it's a good like choice to assign to us. But I know I accidentally saw Castle practicing with Nami before the race, and I know several other people considered it as well, but ended up not doing it. Obviously, the Dart team also didn't consider her super viable, because otherwise they wouldn't have given us Nami. So next up is Amelia. Might be surprising to see Amelia be picked relatively late after, what is this, like 8 units. But the thing with Amelia is that due to its technicality in the rules, she has a use a little bit. Amelia is recruited in chapter 9 by Ephraim by Franz and your main lord, and you're allowed to deploy an undrafted unit if they recruit one of your drafted units through the talk command. And so deploying or drafting Amelia gives you the option to deploy Franz for a chapter. Is that great? No, because it's an undrafted Franz, so he's not allowed to actually counterattack, fight enemies, rescue drafted units. You can't really take advantage of the things that make Franz good usually. But you can use him to bait sleep staves in the Ephraim chapter, for example. You can use him as death fodder if you leave him unequipped, and you can do the same with Amelia. So she does have some use, which is why she went this late. And it's pretty amusing to see Amelia being graded higher than some of these units, but I don't think she did a whole lot. I think she had roughly the same function undrafted as drafted, because even if you have her not drafted, you are allowed to have Amelia see combat as long as she doesn't counterattack. And since she can just unequip her weapon, like just drop it in a convoy and die instantly, that's the same. I think everyone did that with Amelia, so didn't end up doing much. And we had a choice here. We could have given him Colm. I think the consideration was either give him Colm or give him Joshua. We ended up going with Joshua because if you're relying mostly on Erica early on, which is what happens in a SOYO draft, then Joshua doesn't really add a whole lot to an Erica solo. It usually makes it faster. It's usually faster not to use a second unit than it is to use an extra unit. So that's one of the reasons why, for example, Gilliam and Garcia are a bit detrimental early on, or can be detrimental early on, because they have to get XP from Erica while also kind of slowing her down in the meanwhile. And yeah, Joshua's just not great, but he is somewhat helpful, which is why he's in 4 here. And 4-Fanged Offense doesn't really have an early unit that can do combat yet, so it was a little painful to give them a unit that joins in Chapter 5 after being able to deny them any units that join early that can actually do combat, unlike Natasha. But we felt like it was the worst pick available. He doesn't do anything, he doesn't allow an Erica to do anything that she couldn't already do solo. She would just slow him down. And just for the record, everyone recruits Joshua as far as I know. Like, even though you have to slow down a little bit to get him, the alternative to recruiting Joshua is either going the long way around in this chapter, like the Chapter 5 going through the left side, or risking a Killing Edge crit on your units and dying, both of which sound pretty horrible. So recruiting Joshua is not really an issue. Getting his Killing Edge is also just nice for a good weapon for Erica to use. Like, I'm emphasizing Erica so much here because when you're using bad units, the lords that are somewhat good actually become like superstars in the unit in the draft, as you'll see later. Like, they're actually like super important in the race overall and how they turn out. And so it turns out that having units that are worse than lords doesn't add a whole lot. So Joshua is a pretty fine pick here, I think. After Joshua, they gave us Inez. Inez is very curious because he kind of signifies what teams think the optimal route is. I haven't talked a lot about the route split yet, and I should probably do it here. So we wanted to go Ephraim route because A, we practiced it more, thought it was better, and B, because Ephraim is better than Erica, both in the chapters of the route split themselves, but also after the route split. Being forced to work with Ephraim is much better than being forced to work with Erica. They're both good, but Ephraim is a grade above her. And in the late game, Ephraim has more bulk, which allows him to survive the siege chapters more easily, particularly the Orson one and Chapter 20, Darkening Woods, where you have to fight Morva. So the Erica routes are not impossible, but they're probably a bit more tricky depending on how your Erica turns out and what kind of stat boosters you can give her. And so we wanted to play it safe in the late game rather than play it safe in the mid game. We thought mid game for Ephraim and Erica was possibly roughly even. In normal draft phases where you're using like these really good units, Franz, Vanessa, and Seth, stuff like that, Cormac as well, Ephraim route is faster if you play it well. Erica route is safer. There's less that can go horribly wrong, but you'll probably get roughly the same time almost every time, which is why I commentated for an Erica route perspective with Killiam. Ephraim route is a bit riskier, but I thought some people might be tempted to go Erica route. I know Castle, part of Team 5-Fanged Offense, is a fan of Erica route in normal draft phases. And I think for a SOYO race where things aren't as optimal, you're more likely to go Erica route. So we were a bit hesitant to hand out Inez, and it looks like the same kind of went for other teams. But everyone was actually kind of planning on going Ephraim route, it turns out. So Inez was actually a great pick, because Inez on Erica route appears in Chapter 10, which is relatively early, and so he can help route chapters. He's not great at it because he's a sniper. He doesn't fight on enemy phase against one-range enemies, which is the majority of them. But there's a couple of enemies here and there you can pick off with a silver bow or a long bow, and he just speeds up things a fair bit. He's probably one of the best units available here if you assume Erica route. But on Ephraim route, he's not available during the route itself at all. He joins in Chapter 15 instead, in the desert itself. And the rules say that Inez is free in Chapter 15 Ephraim because it's a bit of a carryover from the old draft phases, the normal draft phases. But the idea was that it's kind of hard to keep Erica safe, especially if she's bad. And we don't want to make Soleil free, the other unit that joins along with Erica on Ephraim route in Chapter 15. And so Inez is like, he's not great, but he and Erica together can do it alone if you want them to. Like, he can shoot down the 2 Wyvern Riders that rush Erica in that section, and maybe hit something else if you need him to. But he doesn't add that much, and it makes the chapter less likely to softlock you. Especially from a time where draft races were more of a casual affair and less planned out and less practiced. It's really painful to try and play that section with just Erica, while Soleil and Inez are not allowed to fight at all. That's really, really painful, and it makes for a really long Chapter 15. So Inez was a bit of a quality of life improvement there. But in this case, Inez was a good depth pick if you know someone was going Ephraim route, because Chapter 15 is the only time where Inez is really optimal. We could have deployed him afterwards, but there isn't a whole lot that he can do with his 6 movement at that point. But he could have been okay in the Gorgonek chapter. Alright. The next pick, at this point we're going to get starting into some really good, quote-unquote good units. Units that actually are going to see a fair amount of action. So these are the most important picks, and 4-Fanged Offense is a pretty big advantage here. as they're picking for Dart, because they get to pick which 2 of these good units they get. And what they ended up going with is Colm and Dazla. So first off, you can see that Colm is the only early unit that this team has. So they're going to have to rely on Erica and Colm a fair bit. And if they go Ephraim route, they have to rely on Ephraim and Colm from there. So they can either do the early part with their Lords only and then do the mid-game part with their Lords only, then work into Dazla and use Dazla as their main carry. Dazla is like a budget version of Garcia for the most part stat-wise, and Garcia already has issues, and Dazla just has all those issues exacerbated. He has worse speed, worse accuracy, worse luck, so he can get crit by a bunch of stuff. But as far as the units that are here go, he is by far your best bet. Ephraim would still have to do the majority of the work, or Erica would have to do the majority of the work, but he's there to help out, and once give him plenty of levels, stat boosters, etc., he will do fine. So he's the only unit like this, I think, that's likely enough to get drafted, but doesn't join early enough to turn into a carry right away. So it's a pretty odd way of working with him. Like, you can't really plan around getting him, but if you do get him, you know you can throw him somewhere and he'll be reasonably helpful. Although the fact that he doesn't double a lot of enemies with his like 9 base speed is a bit of a problem, so you'd probably rather have faster units do the work, like the Lords, for example. Very odd. But they don't have a choice. If they want to like use one of their drafted units as a real combat unit, they're gonna have to rely on Colm. And this turned out to be way more viable than I thought it would be. Colm was really interesting here. Now Dart got the pick for Deliberate Bunga, and here's where the memes come in. So at this point, I thought the most likely picks would be Gilliam, Garcia, or Ford, and I was hoping for Gilliam or Garcia because I practiced a fair bit with them. We all kind of did. They're not really the same unit, but they have similar-ish builds where they have like axes after promotion both. They both have 6 move. They're both kind of slow but very tanky, so hard to kill. Gilliam has more defense, but Garcia has more HP and a bit more speed at base. So I thought Garcia was the better one between the two personally. But they're both very similar, and oftentimes during the race you'll hear me say like Gilliam or Garcia because they are very similar. Ford is a different beast. Ford joins in 5x instead of the early game off Erica route, and so he competes with Ephraim a bit more for experience rather than Erica, and also his stats suck. He does have more move, especially if he goes Paladin. If he gets Great Knight, he has the same move after promotion but more before. But Ford is just so bad. My hate for Ford is a running joke on my channel, and this race did not diminish it because they gave him to us. And not for the memes, because they actually thought he was worse than everyone else, and we're going to see just how bad he is during the race, but be assured, I felt very validated after this one. Next up, we had the tough choice of giving 5-fanged offense either Gilliam or Garcia, and we had to think about this one a lot. It was very important. This is probably the worst position to be in this draft looking back, because they get the best carry that is available in the thing. As long as the other teams pick properly and pick the worst carries that is available, then we have to give them the best unit in this whole draft, the best of the 15 units that are making it in, because after this the drafting is over. It's only 5 rounds. So it was with a lot of regret that I have to give them Gilliam %, and they were very surprised that we gave them to them. They were expecting Garcia, as far as I know. Now, like I said, the units have a lot of similarities. Gilliam, of course, takes like 0 damage from a lot of enemies on normal mode, so he is pretty chill. But Garcia is no slouch either, and the big drawback for Garcia is that he promotes a bit later. He gets the Hero Crest in Chapter 10 Erica route, but if you go Ephraim route, he promotes in Chapter 13 early on, which is pretty late, so you have the unpromoted Garcia to work with. Turns out that wasn't a big deal. Specifically Joshua, one of the members of, I think, My Dart Will Go On, said, yeah, it's actually not a big deal at all. In fact, it helps you because he doesn't gain XP once he hits level 20, so you don't have to have an XP bar. Save some frames there, and he's bulky enough to survive. Gilliam, though, has Canto after promotion, which can also be super useful. So, honestly, they were pretty happy to get Gilliam. I don't know what else we were supposed to give them that wouldn't give them a huge advantage from what they had. We were contemplating giving them Soleil, which would make their team look like this, which would have been really funny because then they had to rely on Joshua. Because they have Joshua, I think they would have been able to use Joshua to get the Soleil, and then they have a 1-2 range unit that they can give a bunch of stat boosters if they need to, and then he just destroys everything. So I think Gilliam was the better play between the two, but it was something that we deliberated on a bit because it was the most important pick of the whole part. So that's the draft, that's the recap of it. Let's see how it worked out in the actual race. Alright, so we're gonna start at the beginning, not because I'm gonna commentate the whole race. If you want to see an entire commentated video, I recommend my Gilliam % video where I go through an entire practice run with Gilliam on Erica route, but still it's a whole commentated race, but it has the pre-route split portion as well. The reason I'm starting here is because one of the teams is something very funny. So my team, the Bunga, is in the bottom left. Our names are in the bottom right because of a technical issue on Sal's stream. Top right is Gluecks' team with Joshua, Loudheart, Gluecks, and Justin. And top left is Castle's 5-fanged offense team with also Meister, Spam, and Hues. And they're going to begin here in the prologue. Very simple section of the game. Seth can do everything, but doesn't want to do everything if you want to give more experience to Erica. And how teams approach this differs a little bit. Our team just deliberately bungas through with Seth and gets most of the XP there because we figured Erica doesn't need that much experience. Gluecks, I think there's a similar approach here. I forgot who's like at the wheel for the first portion. Castle's team, 5-fanged offense in the top left, has the funniest bit. Hues just throws Erica to the walls with these two enemy fighters. They have about 40 hit on her, so she probably doesn't die. Plus, she would need to suffer from success to a rapier crit on the first turn. But he just goes for it, gets a crit on the second player phase, avoiding a counterattack, but then boom, dies to the second fighter. He gets a game over in prologue, unfortunately. So they had a reset there. A reset in prologue is not the same as a reset in like chapter 15, of course. It's like maybe a minute lost here at most. But it was very funny to watch at first. The timer in the bottom right doesn't seem to be accurate right now, by the way, but it will be accurate throughout the race. There you go. There it is. Anyway, most of the early game, not a whole lot happens that is of note, but I do want to briefly highlight something that happened somewhat early on. So we're nearing the end of chapter 2. Garcia just killed Bone on our screen in the bottom left here. No big deal, we lose some boss kill experience, but it's fine. Our Ericas, I think collectively for all racers, have been absolutely trash, leveling up like barely any strength whatsoever. And we're also having speed issues. So that's going to be a bit of a theme from here on out. So we're coming up to chapter 3. We are technically recruiting our first drafted unit in Naomi, but she's not going to do anything of real significance. The big thing to note here is that we are trying our best to give kills to Erica because, you know, she needs to get good levels to perform well in chapters 6, 7, and 8 particularly. After that, we don't really care about her anymore. We're just going to shift to F-frame. But as it is right now, this bad Erica is really slowing us down. Look at how little damage she does to a Brigand using an Iron Sword. Normally in chapter 4, you want to start giving kills to units that are not Erica, especially if you've drafted Gilliam or Garcia. They really need to be fed a bunch of experience to be effective in chapters onwards. For the same reasons as Erica, really. They got to perform well in the chapters coming up. Except for Gilliam and Garcia, they also got to perform the route split portion. Seth kills a chest key Brigand through the wall so that we keep both the door key that the other Brigand drops and this chest key. This chest key is what unlocks the Angelic Rope chest in chapter 8. That means you don't have to draft Colm to get it. Of course, the team that has Colm can actually use Colm for that purpose if they want to, although they might not. Seth is like delightfully wasting his Silverlance uses on the wall to get us through as soon as possible. I think this positioning is a little bit off because if Erica's like base speed and the thief dies her, and there you go, there goes our door key. This wasn't even the part that I wanted to highlight, but just as he did it, I remember that it happened here. Oh yeah, we say screw it, kill the thief, and yeah, ending turn here is the right play because that means the hand axe thief won't just uselessly attack Erica. Now Seth can go in. Erica can follow closely behind. Now here I was telling Pyrope, let's try to feed the boss kill to Erica. Give Seth an Iron Sword and put him in front of the boss and have him weaken the boss for Erica to kill. And base Seth with an Iron Sword does exactly that. I think it's like 12 times 2 to a boss with 25 HP. So it works out exactly. Couple problems with that. For one, Seth right now does not have an Iron Sword. He's going to use a Javelin instead. Yoko's is Merc on enemy face. He will counterattack boss, but he has to be at 1 range because otherwise he will switch to a hand axe. I guess that would be okay. But Seth just double misses with a Javelin, unfortunately, so that's not going to happen. But that's okay because this turn, Erica can just give him the Iron Sword. Like, we can just do a trait right here. Equip Seth with the Iron Sword. I don't know why it's going to the bottom of the inventory. And then we just put Seth there. And boss dead because Seth gains strength. Normally when I play this chapter, I feed Erica a lot more than Pyrope does, and so my strength always my Seth strength is always at base. But Pyrope killed several bosses at this point with Seth got a strength level up and ruined that. So Erica is RNG screwed and underleveled. Do not worry though, because chapter 4 is coming up where a redemption may be in the cards for her. I guess we'll stay here before we go skip ahead a little bit, because it's quite funny what happens here. I remember when we were playing this, normally Pyrope likes to try and route this chapter before the top left reinforcements show up, and the way you do that is by killing the enemies on the turn that you cross the bridge. I think in order to do that, you have to maybe break the snag in the bottom left to beat the enemies there, and then Seth routes the entire bottom right portion of the map. Of course, in order to do this, a lot of XP from that would go for Erica goes for Seth instead. I usually take it slower, and whoever my carry is, or Erica, takes the majority of the kills, including the boss. I do feed the eyeballs to Seth because having good res and one's range is just way more effective at not having either of those things. Erica's res is okay, but at this point it's not reliably going to be high. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put this on 2x speed, just so we go through it a little bit faster. The most important point is look how hard Erica is struggling. I think if you get 1 or 2 points of strength, Erica can start one-rounding in this chapter, specifically the, what are they called? The Unpromoted Entombs, the cannon fodder, not the whites, but the other guys. Not the bone walkers, but the other guys. There we go. So, but here she's having a lot of trouble. I think it might have been better if we just let the bone walkers go to Seth, because those have lances, the ones that come from the right. And it took Erica like multiple rounds of combat to kill him. But like, just look at how little damage she's doing. It's so pathetic. I think we're gonna face a chance of death here too. Bottom left screen if you haven't already caught it. And we're just gonna go up into the mountains. I think it might have been better if we were in a forest, but I guess we're trying to, you know, play it safe, not attack on player phase. No strength still. We are getting some good defense though. Like if we somehow had this plus like decent strength and speed, I guess if Arian had good stats, you wouldn't have bad stats, right? But damn. I think we should have fallen there instead of waiting. It is what it is. Still no strength. You got 11 speed though. That's like 2 above our base. That's something. At like level 9 or whatever it is that we're at. Oh my god. Hitting the guys in the forest is even worse. At least in route maps, I feel like it's not that bad to take more turns, because yeah, most of the time is going towards the rounds of combat, but taking multiple rounds of combat to kill like one enemy is just absolutely terrible. Seth is going to take out 1 more eyeball, and the rest is going to be for Erica. I guess normally what you could do is break the snag on the left side, and then Erica takes the kills on that side by baiting the enemies 1 by 1 while Seth goes to the middle. I know exactly how that works, but I've never done it. I always feel like taking a little bit extra time in this chapter to train up your units more is good. Strength! Finally, our first one is strength level 7. I was exaggerating a little bit. Seth is going to take the top left part of the map. I was kind of worried that we're going to use up the silver lance and we're like using javelin instead, but it's a 4-use javelin, so it's going to break. And now this guy's going to die to the silver lance. It's like, no, I need some of those for Ephraim later on. We actually don't get that many good lances on the way here. We don't get Cormac's Killer Lance, so the Silver Lance is kind of all you got if you need like a stronger lance. That's not like the Axe Reaver. Steel Lance obviously not very good. So I was kind of like, not the Silver Lance. You already used way more than I usually do. Another point of strength miss, but we got everything else. So insane. It's like the weakest but like strongest Erica at the same time. Bulky, kind of fast, but really bad. It looks like this is going to kind of get us caught up on. You can see Colm on the upper right screen is doing like, he got out of here, like he's like 1 turn behind us as far as like routing goes. And the top left castle's team is just arriving. I don't know what slowed them down besides the reset in prologue. But anyway, we're in chapter 5 now. Chapter 5's strategy is kind of interesting, but I do want to stick to highlights more than whole playthroughs. And I already commentated a whole run on my channel before, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip around a little bit to find some highlights. Alright, I'd like you to pay attention to our screen as I press play here, and look at this Erica, and remember what she was like at the end of chapter 4, and now this is the end of chapter 5, and she's gonna pick up 1 more village and then head to the boss, I think is the idea. Look at that strength, look at that stats, look at that. So much strength, she's just one-running everything. What the fuck happened? Total best character arc I've ever seen. Yeah, she got like 3 strength in this chapter alone. Pretty crazy. I think Sal blessed us by stopping by our voice call during chapter 4. Thanks, Sal. Much appreciated. But yeah, Erica turned out fine. So at this point, we were kind of discussing, hey, should we maybe consider going Erica routes, considering she's this good? and I really wasn't sure what was the best call. I decided to stop it here, stop looking for highlights, because this is when Ford joined, and I thought you guys might like to see how he turned out. I will speed it up a little bit because 5x is, well, chapter 5x. So Ford competes for XP with Ephraim, but Klaire told Pyrope, like, hey, I'm doing a mid game, but I can deal with like a level 9 Ephraim, and that's fine, or like level 8 or something. Like, it's fine to feed as much as to Ford as possible. So that's what we set out to do. Feed kills that would normally go to Ephraim or Orson to Ford as much as possible, which will slow us down a fair bit, but again, I usually think it's worth, and most people agree, taking extra combat early on if the returns are extra level up. So first Ford level up, and it's strength. So I guess every enemy just magically got +1 defense, because otherwise he would never be 1 point short, right? And we're tagging Kyle along so that Orson can potentially rescue him and set up kills for Ephraim this way. Again, free units can pick up undrafted units if they want to. The undrafted units is just not allowed to do combat themselves, or not allowed to counterattack themselves. So Orson is himself weighed down. One tough part of feeding kills in 5x is that most of your weapons are kind of garbage. You have like, everyone has like a steel lance on them, and they have like one iron sword, one steel sword, and there's like a killer lance in the chest that we're not getting. There's Orson's silver sword, and that's kind of about it. And the silver sword is not good for weakening things because it just one-shots everything. And yeah, so we're going to try to get as much XP to Ford as possible without feeding him kills. That's why one of the parts that makes draft racing so interesting to me is trying to find places where you can feed your units kills without slowing down too much. Because obviously if you take extra combats, you're going to consume extra time. Here's a second Ford level up, and it's strength and speed. So here I was joking around like, hey, actually maybe we're secretly using Franz actually. We just got a free Franz draft, which is pretty based, right? I can tell you right now, Ford will never live up to the potential that he seems to promise with his class, and really anything that looks even remotely good about him. Throne room, I think I usually feed to Ephraim. I think the idea here was to kill the shaman with Orson, then run Ford up in here. Use another Vol. Unfortunately, base Ford, even with a steel lance, always double soldiers, I think. For some reason, this guy went for Ephraim instead. He's too scared of Ford getting good. Ephraim got his first level up, then went to level 5 and only got like HP speed, so he's gonna need some more work. I was like, before we want to make the route choice, I kind of want to see Ephraim's level ups. And if they're like really bad, obviously we go Erica route, and if they're really good, we go Ephraim route. That would be the idea. But since we don't get to see that many level ups, maybe we'll have to make that choice in a less informed fashion. But yeah, some extra combat to feed the Zanta, kill the Ford, and we're rewarded with a beautiful HP only level up. Thanks, Ford. Super appreciate it. Anyways, chapters 6, 7, and 8 will be fairly fast because our Erica is just that godly. We sell the red gem here so we can buy a restore staff from Mulder, who has joined us a couple chapters ago. We're now going to like start doing stuff with him, I guess. Or well, this is more like because the restore staff is in that shop and I think nowhere else. So this is just an easy way to remember to buy it. Anyway, I'll skip ahead to like chapter 9 when we have Ephraim, because Erica killing everything, that's fun to watch, but it's not a highlight. It's just how it usually goes. Well, this is less Erica, it's like something else, but you should watch that part if you're interested. I'm going to skip ahead. Alright, we're going to start off with a little bit of chapter 9. Erica has left us, and we are instead left with Ephraim that's barely leveled up. I think he's got a couple okay level ups in chapter 8, and that's all you've missed. And we're going to start training Ford more. At this point, I was kind of protesting, not because it's Ford, but because I was like, we probably shouldn't take multiple combats at this point to like feed 4 kills if it's inconvenient. Rather just make fast moves that Ephraim, like just have Ephraim kill stuff basically. We'll see another level up here, see how he's turned out. So yeah, that's pretty good now. With that level up, it's pretty good. We brought Mulder along for this chapter because there's a sleep staff priest. As long as you stay in the same row as the archers in his little corridor, you cannot get hit by sleep as long as you stay all the way on the left, like Ford is doing, like Ephraim is not doing. But here we were pretty, careless about positioning Ephraim because we have to restore staff to heal him. I think it's still preferable to just try to stay out of sleep range at all times, because you still have to deal with the sleep animation, and now you have to like make sure that Ford is safe and that Mulder is safe especially. Take out the restore. We probably shouldn't have taken out the heal staff at the same time here, or the men staff, or honestly both. But whatever. But now Ford can pick off archers. He is fast enough to double archers, fortunately, but not a whole lot else. So I think the fastest way to go about this will be to just have Ephraim do most of the enemy phasing. And if anything is coincidentally left alive, then Ford just takes that. And if not, it's fine. We'll train Ford along the way. Strength level up for Ephraim is very nice. Get another sleep here. There's no misses. So I think he has 1 left at this point. Running him out of sleep is like nice because you don't have to pay attention to him when you're going through the middle portion, but also you have to watch all the sleep animations and maybe a restore animation if he hits, and deal with the consequences of like whatever Molder has to do. But there's the last sleep use. I think the ideal positioning would actually have been to have like Nami in a spot where this priest would have to go all the way to the upper left to eat the sleep, and just have her stay asleep the whole chapter. That probably would have been optimal if you wanted to like play it super safe and not have to worry about positioning at all. Like just make it very easy, I guess is the way I would phrase it. Here again, I think it would have been better if Ephraim just took on the Armor Knights. I'm saying all this like not to criticize Klaire, because I think she did a good job playing overall, but just for like what I would do differently if I had all the time in the world to think about it and had like an easy position to criticize it from. Like, it's a race, you're gonna be in rush, you're gonna do some things that in hindsight look a little bit silly. We are being a little bit careful to not kill off Amelia because she has the speed wing, not because we care a lot about her unit as a drafted utility. Actually, we don't even have Amelia drafted, but she can still be kind of helpful as an undrafted unit if you don't kill her. Like, first of all, you get the speed wing if you recruit her like this, and second of all, she can be used to bait the sleep away from your units because she goes to the bottom of the deployment order. And you do need to keep the Slim Lance on her, which means that she's not allowed to counterattack. So if the enemy kills her on enemy phase, you have to be careful that it's like a one-hit KO and not a one-round KO with like a double. So the safest play here is exactly what Klaire did, is just have her deposit all her items. I think one of the other teams is going to do the exact same thing as well. We're still ahead on timer, by the way, I think. Our timer right now is at 46, about hit 47. So, and you can see that Castle's team, FFO, is at the route split. And I think Gluecks' team in the upper right is shopping after the route split, but their timers are fairly far ahead of ours, and we're further along. So we have a reasonably good lead at this point. But it's far from over. Ephraim gets another sick level up on our screen right away. Absolutely marvelous. But yeah, I think this gives a good idea of like what our team is like. You can either try to kill things with Ford and just like 3-shot him, or you can just kill him outright with Ephraim. And obviously most of the time it's going to be better to kill with Ephraim, but the reason that we still have to bother like feeding Ford is because Ephraim on his own will always be slower than like a reasonably competent unit, and we're just trying to squeeze in levels with Ford. After this chapter, there's no more good training opportunities for him. He just has to like deliver. There's another good level up like HP skill on him, by the way. Fuck Ford. But Phantom Ship is not a time to feed Ford. That's the time where he has to like perform. So that's when we have to promote him with the chapter 7 Night Crest. Like we can't keep him unpromoted anymore. He just won't be useful that way. So we're just trying to like get him to like a nice level threshold where we can promote him, but he's so terrible. He's still like fine against archers, I guess, but everything else he's always going to be like subpar against. Very cringe. Let's zoom ahead a little bit because chapter 9 is pretty long, and find another good highlight. So we're about to embark in chapter 10. Normally the play for a team that cannot quickly kill this boss, which is really only possible with Vanessa and then maybe Franz, it's just like go in that little one-way part in the upper part of the map and just unequip your weapons, stay there for 10 turns and just spam end turn. But here we were like, let's go get some XP for Ephraim. And Klaire said, well, when I tried doing that, what I just described, where you go into that little dead end where only one enemy can attack you at a time, Cormac came for me and started killing me. And I've played this chapter with the end turn method a lot of times. You can see how good Ephraim is here right away. I've tried the end turn strategy many times and Cormac always came for me, whereas they've never had that happen. So I'm really curious what the causes of that difference between us. But unfortunately, I think this position almost virtually guarantees that Cormac will eventually go for us, because he goes for he just checks how many turns away every enemy is and goes for whatever's closest. And in case of a tie, he goes for his favorite target with the normal targeting AI, as far as I know. So like, who doesn't counter, who's at low HP. And right now, I think he's still attracted to the NPCs because they are generally going to be less bulky and durable than Ephraim. But at some point, there's going to be a reason for him to change. The other reason this positioning is just kind of is that it puts him in range of all the Cavaliers from the top right. I think Klaire overlooked that they could attack us from the water tiles. She thought she was safe here, but Ephraim certainly is not. And I think this is one of our first causes of losing time to the other teams on the route split itself. You can see that the other teams are either halfway through chapter 9, and in case of Gluecks and Justin's team, they are done with Gib, so they're basically done there, and they're only a couple turns behind us. Our timer is still the lowest, but the margin is getting thinner. Ephraim every turn is facing a kill lance from Cormac. I remember when this happened, it was like 10 damage with some crit rate, but Ephraim has over like 38 max HP, I think. He got the Chapter 8 Angelic Robe to keep him safe in the late game, but it's also being helpful here, as not only would Cormac have to crit him, but he also have to get hit by like everything else, and even then I'm not even sure if he'd die. Ephraim is that good. He got a couple of good level ups, including defense, and he's on a forest, so it is safe, but this is like 4 times as much combat per turn as he needed to face, I think. But I understand Klaire putting him here if she had experiences beforehand where she would fight Cormac over and over in the forests up there where you usually spam end turn. So I know what went on here. Either way, Chapter 10 is basically wrapped up now that Ephraim didn't get crit and melted here. So let's move on to another cool highlight. So now we're going into Phantom Ship. Fortunately, there's a shop right before where you can buy not pure waters, elixirs, and so it becomes a lot more safe for units to just be out and about on their own, as long as they can heal themselves with elixir every now and then. And I remember this when I was expressing concern, like, I don't think we should save over our only save, because what if we have to go back and have Ford train in a tower because it just turned out that bad. He is level 14 and then promoted right now, which sounds okay, but like 10 strength at this point, when it's not really going to grow a whole lot more because his XP gain is going to slow way the frick down, it's not looking great. But it's all we have. Ephraim can do most of the work on Phantom Ship, so there's an argument for not even deploying Ford here and just having Ephraim do all the work by himself. But it would take significantly longer, and I think it would be good to have Ford get some more experience. Ephraim's going to like level cap. I guess you could save XP bar by having Ephraim do all the work and just getting to 20. But hey, Ford is deployed now, we're gonna have to deal with it. We're still limited in pure waters, you can only buy those later. So Ford is gonna take a heavy beating from these eyeballs up north. And Ephraim is probably gonna go down the middle ship. Obviously FE8 is known for just like Lamau use javelins and everything, but I remember expressing disagreement that we shouldn't bring like 4 javelins and elixir on Ephraim. I think generally you should use an Iron Lance turn 1 to have higher accuracy and kill almost everything. And then the few ranged enemies that are left, then you just use javelins. I've also run out of javelins before, but our funds weren't really concerned at this point. It ended up being fine for Ephraim inventory-wise. Of course, he can always go back into his supply and get more stuff, but like, look at how many guys he's fighting at one range. Iron Lance would have been fine. But hey, javelin all the way, I guess. The great thing about if you have a carry like that has 8 move is you can get onto the ship earlier and enter the stairs. I think you might have to be a flyer for that actually. So basically Finesse Cormac strats is you go into the stairway and stop reinforcements to save some combat here. Can't do that in SOYO, you just gotta face all the enemies. But the reinforcements and the new ship with our shell appear roughly around the time you have access to them, as long as you're just killing everything with Ephraim. And ours is turning out really good. Like it's, I think 14 strength right now and 16 speed. I was trying to like give Ford a chance to get some promoted kills, but Ephraim crits the one promoted Entombed and got that XP Pinata all for himself. That's okay. You keep doing that. There he broke a javelin on a big guy. So Ford could get that one, but in order to get it, he would have to get on a middle ship and probably face a lot more danger. Ephraim has killed the majority of the enemies, but there's clearly some left because they just keep popping up. It's Phantom Ship, they're always there. And again, if you look at your upper right, you can see that Deliberate Bunga is not that far ahead of My Dart Will Go On. We're sure they just got here while we are several turns in, and our timer is still like 5 minutes ahead of theirs. But it looks close. It is scary to see them breathing down your neck like that. During the race, we could not see the other feeds unless we peeked in on them. Personally, I was the one streaming my event, and it turns out that Discord, if you take your focus off of the Discord screen share window, it will not pick up on OBS anymore. It has to be an active window for that to work. It's great tech work right there. Very cringe. Here we're trying to figure out, you know, should Ford... Let me slow down for a bit, because this is an interesting explanation, actually. Chill out. Let me slow down a little bit here. I feel like the faster video is also making me talk faster, which I apologize for. I hope it's clear. Anyway, you can see that there's a lot of fog of war between Ford and La Rochelle. We were trying to get the La Rochelle ship to help Dosla out, because clearly he wasn't able to handle 2 enemies at once, because they kept harassing La Rochelle. And, you know, we had her as a drafted unit. We might as well try to keep her alive if we get her elixir. So my concern was... if you use an elixir first from this position, then you ensure that he will get to use an elixir and then make it to the fog of war section. Whereas if you move first and then use an elixir, if you bump into an enemy on the way, your turn will stop you no longer after the elixir. So I was like, okay, just elixir first and then cancel into the fog. Klaire or Pyrope, I forgot which of the two, said we should move forward like here first, then use an elixir, and then go into the fog. With the idea being that then you can see what's out there, and you might want to be able to get to a different spot, which was the correct approach, but I stubbornly insisted that we elixir first. I was afraid of making a mistake, I think, like just making a misinput. But yeah, that's actually way smarter to use like a movement and an item used to see more in Fog of War and then make a decision. So, might be, team, might be. But we're deliberating a bit, and then Klaire just decided, okay, elixir here, which was my B. I think there's nothing here in the fog. Oh, there was like one enemy there, but we were never gonna run through him. He was not in our direct pathing. Anyway, I think at this point I said everyone should go back to fight the death coils at the start of the map. Some deliberation here. I'll just speed it back up. There's like a couple good moments here in Phantom Ship that we gotta show you before we move on. You might want to keep an eye on the upper right screen as well if you can follow two at once, because there's also going to be a highlight for them. It's coming up shortly. I hope they don't happen at the exact same time, because I might want to have to rewind and see both. Let's watch our screen first. So Larshel still gets overwhelmed. There's the death coil. Ephraim does not double him with a javelin, but does like a third of HP. I think like slightly less than a third. So I think we decide to kill an eyeball and just let the death coil attack us once more. But there are a lot more enemies. I'm going to slow it down a little bit because it's getting tight. Ephraim's going to fight a couple more guys from the middle boat. There's a couple eyeballs out there. I don't remember how much the death coil did. We didn't heal from his attack. So now we're down to 21. We're missing an attack, or we're dodging an attack. We're at 21. Our javelin broke. That's okay. We have like 3 more in the convoy. Another eyeball dodge. 21 HP still. Very calculated this. Very calculated. 15 HP thanks to another eyeball. How much does death coil do? We don't know. 9 HP. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, chat. Are we cooked? Are we cooked? And the death coil puts him at 1 HP. 1 less defense or 1 less res, and Ephraim would have died. But he didn't. Thank you, Ephraim, for being cool. Also, the Angelic Robe. Massive savior here. Literally a guardian angel. Ford comes in. Of course, he can't one-round this gargoyle. But he crits. Ford clutch? Never seen it before in my life. Okay, that is the main highlight for us on Phantom Ship. Let's watch Gluecks' team on the upper right here. They have Ephraim doing everything on their own. I don't think they even deployed Colm. They just have Ephraim do everything. He did arrive to Dazla's ship. Their screen share is a little slowed down for some reason. Might be some lag on Cell's end or their internet, but either way you can see Ephraim battling like a champ. He can't counter at 2 range because enemies will just go for Dazla behind him. Larshel goes for another heal between the 2 pillars, probably the safest position for her to be in. Dazla takes out one of the gargoyles, probably the best case scenario. That those enemies are more dangerous to Larshel. And now Ephraim could talk to Larshel to recruit her and Dazla. They decide to instead attack. I don't remember why that was. I'm sure it was not a mistake. I'm just curious what the thought process behind it was. And enemies go for Dazla over Ephraim if they can, I think, because his bulk is probably lower. Dazla's is. He has less defense, less avoid probably too. They work with expected damage over straight up damage. Most of the time anyway. It's like part of their equation. And I don't think there's any like bone walkers left. So Larshel should be safe as long as someone stays in front of her. Here I think they do the recruit with Ephraim. He doesn't have anything better to do anyway, so they do that. And then Larshel talks to Dazla. Probably can't go straight back. I think they're gonna supply her items. No, they don't. Okay. Larshel can't go straight back and then supplies her items. You can Canto and then supply your items for some reason. I feel like supply is like hard-coded to be available after everything you do in this game. And it can be annoying, but in this case it's convenient. Then Dazla takes out an eye. This is the team that drafted Dazla, so they're able to use him to start clearing enemies. Very nice that they pick up an extra unit for themselves. Although with Colm they do have an extra unit already. So maybe they didn't need it. So a couple dodge by Larshel, and there comes the death coil. And there comes the death coil. Larshel's dead. Now they did technically recruit Dazla, and there's a couple recruitments like that in FE8, like especially early chapters where you get 2 characters at once, like Ross Garcia. People like that. There was like, they feel like they come in pairs, and it's pretty rare in FE that a blue unit just leaves your army. But I think Larshel's death means that Dazla is leaving. I mean, he is, after all, you know, kind of Larshel's retainer, so why would he not stay, right? But he gets double by the death coil and dies anyway. I think he does stay if he's blue, but I'm not entirely sure. But if he's dead, then obviously he's not staying. So Ephraim is on his own again, unfortunately. And theirs is pretty good against the Death Coil too. They have a pretty good Ephraim going here. Let's look back at our team, because we're not done with the highlights on this portion of the map, but I'm going to speed it up a little bit. Back in the bottom left, you can see that the monsters have just appeared on next chapter. Ford could have done an interesting rescue job on Ephraim here to get him further into the map, but we decided against it and just do basically the Ephraim solo strat with Ford just existing on the map and I guess getting kills and distracting enemies. I feel like with this strat maybe he should just not have been deployed, but there's a thing you can do where you have a third unit rescue Ephraim on turn 1, and Ford uses a Pure Water, and the next turn the third unit gives Ephraim to Ford, and then Ford launches Ephraim very far into the map, and this skips a bunch of combats. Of course, for us it would come at the risk of Ford dying, probably, because enemies would be able to attack both Ephraim and him, and they would choose him probably, and he would fail to 1 round, and probably die, and do a bunch of other stuff poorly. But now we have a Ford in the bottom section of the map. I think at this point we just want Ford to like go away from most of the enemies here. I'm not sure if he's far away enough from the gargoyles that are coming from the bottom left side. I think they come up next turn at the latest, but might be this turn. Here I think Ephraim... Oh, we were discussing Ephraim should probably go up and left to make the fighters go away from him if they're afraid of Ephraim dying. If they're not afraid of Ephraim dying, he should go like they did, because it's closer to where he needs to be in the end. But I was saying we should maybe go to left of where he ended up so that he doesn't get hit by these fighters. And they go for Ford instead. But... you know, maybe I was just trying to get Ford killed. I don't know. This was clearly the better move. Okay, yeah, Gargoyle's coming up for Ford. And right now, Ford kind of wants to use swords to take care of the pirates and the fighter that you can see on screen here. But against the Gargoyles, obviously you don't want to do that. You want to have a lance out so you don't get weapon triangled. You kill him sooner. Ford is at that unfortunate point where, like, no matter which weapon he picks, he's going to be in a bad spot, especially against Gargoyles, where you can't really weigh yourself down, you can never double. Ford probably doesn't double them in the first place, although it did double that one previous chapter. That one was that was near Dozla and Darshell, but maybe that one was one of the level 1 ones that they put there, especially for Dozla to kill. But Ephraim's road seems to be relatively clear. He just needs to keep spamming elixirs. We had like a funny thing going where we wanted to discard low-use javelins whenever possible instead of putting them back in a convoy, because if you don't do that, then your convoy can either get full or you have to keep scrolling past a bunch of javelins, which is, it's a very minor issue in the grand scheme of things, but it was just kind of like a thing like, please do that. Anyway, Ford fights Gargoyles. Watch his HP very closely here. Boom! Put down to 1 HP by a Horse Slayer. I completely forgot that was there. You never fight these in a normal draft, but in a SOYO anything can happen, it appears. And so Ford is now at 1 HP among a bunch of enemies. One of them has a Horse Slayer. Of course, he still has a couple of elixirs left he can use to get back to full HP. He's probably going to have to cower into a corner somewhere. I think I was suggesting going down the dock, like all the way south, basically. Ford has more movements than Gargoyles do. He has 8 to their... I think they have 6, but they still fly, sort of like mini wyverns, if you will. They're like, oh, we go up? And I was like, no, we go down. And please equip the javelin. Please equip the javelin. It's weapon triangle. Yes, thank you. I think at this point, Klaire didn't realize that Ford doesn't get weighed down by javelins anymore. Comes up during Grotto Keep too. But here we go. Put Ford all the way down. Yes, out of range. Thank you. And next turn, he can have a free shot at the Horse Slayer guy who is at low HP and be completely fine. Or Ephraim can kill the boss by that time, possibly, depending on how the RNG turns out. Here we did discard a javelin. We're learning. There's still a couple in convoy, but it's fine. I think I never discarded a javelin here. And we're chilling here. I think we're considering using a stat booster. Oh, we're taking out the silver. Yeah, this is smart. I think I was like panicking over this. If you have a weapon in your convoy that you're considering using the next turn, it's nice to take it out previous turn, because then you can line up a forecast before committing to convoying. Because let's say you see in the battle forecast that Ephraim actually takes too much damage or doesn't do enough damage, then you could still decide to move away from the boss for a turn. But if you want to have to pull it out of the convoy, then you're already committed to the space you move to. And here we see, okay, Silverlance actually does get to 4 shot, I think, and doubles. I think we ended up going with the Axe Reaver here, and yet an Ephraim crits. So we save Ford his revenge against the Gargoyle. I guess in that case, we're saving Gargoyles. Okay, we're in Chapter 13, Fluor Spars Oath. And Ford can get danced turn 1 by Tethys to get into the action even earlier. Disgusting. Why would you want more Ford action? I don't know. He doesn't have a Pure Water on him, even though we bought them last time. And he's up against a bunch of soldiers. Now, the thing we were discussing here, I think is there's 2 fighters on the bottom right of our screen. And one of them has a halberd and a hand axe. The other one just has a hand axe. And we had some unclear communication. Ford as a paladin has like 2 bad choices here. Either use an iron sword to not counter them, or use a Javelin to counter them, but then the Halberd guy has better hit on him due to Weapon Triangle. And I think I was advocating for using the Iron Sword to just take out the fighter that has the Halberd. I think on player phase right now he would have a hand axe equipped, so it would be safe. I think I was misunderstood, or there was like some disagreement over it because he ended up staying on a forest. And I guess they were gonna gamble with the Javelin here. I was like afraid of missing with the Javelin. And Klaire decided, okay, I'm not attacking the fighter with the Iron Sword, just killing him right away, forgetting that that's not the guy with the Halberd. We should have checked that. I didn't know which one it was either, but I think the better idea would have been to check. And now he is using an Iron Sword, so now the Halberd will be like, okay, if I can kill Ford from this HP, I'm going to go for it, and if I cannot, then I will use a hand axe, probably. Either that, or he will just like see I'm doing a bunch of damage, I'm using the Halberd anyway, even though I have a hand axe. Depends on how much HP Ford would exactly end up with. But it's certain that if Ford would die to this Halberd, then the Halberd will be used. Of course, because Ford is so bad, he doesn't kill the Cavaliers that surround him first, and because one-range enemies that only have one range will move before those that have 1 to 2 range, or because this fighter is just late in the movement order, either way, he ends up being safe from the Halberd. But now, he's in bolting range. And I don't think he's in a forest. I think the Cav above him is in the forest, so he's very vulnerable. Fortunately, he ended up dodging a hit that would certainly have killed him. Elixir here is kind of dicey because you're not healing that much HP, and you're staying in a position that's bad, but, I mean, you can't move, so what are you supposed to do? I think maybe we should have... I think the right move here, from this perspective right now, is to Javelin the Halberd fighter. Because that's like a major source of damage, and if you kill him, we're out of the woods. And just kind of hope that everything else doesn't end up killing you. Klaire ended up going with Elixir. I don't remember what I thought of this at the time. It seems okay, but I was worried that this might preserve him for now, but because he's all on his own without a supply convoy like Ephraim, he will eventually run out of elixirs, because he has way more things to do in this chapter, and if he gets hit by like one bolting, he's going to be low on HP again at the very least, and surely bolting plus Halberd will kill him. We got another terrible level up fort, all bulk, nothing else. The enemies stay insistent on surrounding him, but he'll probably kill a Cavalier now and make room for the Halberd fighter if he so inclines to attack. And we're using the Iron Sword still, so we'll probably dodge the Halberds, but let's find out. Ford, how bad are you? And he dodges the Halberd, thank god, and because of the forest, the fighter ends up surviving. Sniper ends up chipping in a little bit, but missing. I think Selena's turn is still there. Yes, Selena can still attack. And Ford didn't move, so he's still in range. Oh, barely survives with 6 HP. Now he's reasonably safe. I think now here we were advocating for either Javelin to the forest that was freed up, or Iron Sword in the forest that should be out of bolting range, or retreating all the way back. That's an option too. I think you Javelin into the forest or something, because that's out of Selena range. Iron Sword, that's fine too, I guess. I don't know if the Halberd guy will go for the Halberd again, but we'll see. I feel like if you're in the forest, you're not going to likely to get hit by other enemies, and so he'll just like, yeah, he's just going to go for the hand axe at this point. The movement order also changed a bit, I think, because the enemy is now on low HP, the hand axe Halberd fighter, and enemies that are on low HP go differently in the movement order. I forget if they go earlier or later, usually. I remember Leon, for example, is a good example of an enemy that where that is significant. But yeah, that is Ford's big highlight here. Let me just quickly peek at what the other teams are doing. So Castle's team clearly catching up here, probably thanks to the power of Gilliam finally being promoted and being able to get through maps a lot faster than, for example, Ford would, since clearly Ford's bulk is more of an issue. And the timer between us is not far off either. They are like 1, 2, maybe 3 minutes different from us. It looks like 2 minutes. And my Dark Will go on is actually in the same map with a promoted Colm and a pretty solid time that is only like less than 2 minutes ahead. Like it's pretty neck and neck at this point. It's a very close race. So that lead that we built up over the early game is not holding up very well. They're catching up to us. I blame Ford personally. None of my team should feel bad about anything like that. Ford is bad. Anyway, let me get to the next highlight here. Alright, coming up here is Grotto Keep, and we're bringing Molder again because there is Berserk around. Tethys is coming along as well. And our plans involve just using Ephraim, once some kind of 6-move unit like Gilliam or Garcia, and Tethys, and that would be enough to get Renak. And if you can get Renak and you can get Ephraim in there safely, then you can usually circumvent Berserk to the point where you never have to face a Berserk chance. So Molder was superfluous, but he is like helpful as an assurance. You can kind of just put a unit in Berserk range and have Molder cure them. The problem is, of course, that then you have to keep Molder safe, and this is depending on the turn you're in, not much of a burden because you already need space to keep Tethys safe, and usually there's multiple spaces of those, so you just put him next to Tethys and he's generally fine as long as you are aware of your positioning. But this is a map where enemies can come from all different kinds of directions, and it's easy to make a mistake here, especially because there's one enemy that makes a Molder positioning very, very dangerous indeed. We start off by having Ford go forward. He does have 3 more moves than Ephraim, so he was the best candidate to start routing enemies here. But there's a Sword Reaver guy in there that is not taking kindly to his presence, and Folder's immediately... Folder. I mean, I guess Ford is a bit of a folder, but he's not Molder. He's already getting low. Fortunately, he dodged, and now he's at 11 HP. And I think at this point, we do still heal him, but there was like some kind of point earlier where he's like really about to die. Anyway, Ephraim can get danced, but you gotta be aware of Tethys' space restrictions. This puts Tethys out of range of soldiers, but we do still have to kill both fighters now, no matter what, because otherwise Tethys is in danger. And Ford gets hit by the hand axe that had like, I don't know, 20 hit on him. It's unexpected, but also he's in range of a javelin and a longbow, so I was really against this move, but due to lag, I didn't get to protest it fast enough for it to not happen. Ephraim is in position to counter one soldier, but I think not both, so the second soldier has to be dealt with next turn. Really important in this chapter that you deal with enemies like this as they move towards you, otherwise they get in your camp, and now Molder and Tethys are going to have a much harder time finding space. Especially because the reinforcements are going to keep on coming from both of those sides, so you can't just move towards the enemy, dance the unit, and then go somewhere else. Ephraim kills the middle knight with the javelin, but was supposed to do it from one space closer. That way he would have countered the other 2 knights on enemy phase, and this would have eliminated both of them and allowed for more free positions. And I think this positioning on Tethys and Ford was also not ideal, because now we have to move Tethys all the way backwards and Ford is still going forward. And this is the other spot I was talking about earlier where Klaire wasn't aware that Javelin would have been better, because this would have given Ford weapon triangle advantage without weighing him down at all. But at this point Klaire thought that Ford was being weighed by Javelin, that's why that happened. Iron Lance also would have been fine, of course, but you can't fit everything into Ford's little 5-space inventory. You need to elixir, kind of wanted the pure water, kind of wants a sword, kind of wants both kind of lances, might need both javelins, etc, etc. Both javelins, I mean multiple javelins. Anyway, we want to get through this door, preferably use a good unit's or bad unit's turn to do it, but decided to do it with Ephraim instead. Ford can kind of block off these Myrmidons that he's not even one-rounding because he's cringing forward. And Tethys and Molder want to move forward to stay out of enemy range. There's enemies coming from the left bottom side as well, and you kind of want them near Ephraim so they can help Ephraim and not just sit there doing nothing but being sitting ducks. Unfortunately, because Ephraim is the one who didn't open the door, he is in a spot where he doesn't get to counter the enemies immediately coming after him, and the Berserk range is also very close to Ephraim, like a couple spaces up, so he really wants to be further up but not in the Berserk range. It's a very tight space he's had to maneuver into. And here's the big problem that Molder runs into. That bishop would have had suicide on Ephraim if Molder was just like not on the map, but because Molder is there and in range, he just goes for a silence instead. They prioritize status staff uses always, but because he's silencing, he decides not to attack. Of course, normally you don't have any magical units on the map in the first place, and so he just always attacks you and you don't think about him. So it's one of those places where not practicing with a specific unit like Molder can bite you in the butt. I think Pyrope was shouting out about this as it was happening, but again, it was a very chaotic map, and it's really hard to listen to your teammates when you're playing. I realized this myself a couple of times, and we really gotta get better at that, because, oh boy. now it's difficult for Ephraim and Molder to stay safe. The knight that is now killed by Ephraim didn't move in the first place, so that's fine, but Molder's gonna have to start dodging to survive. These armor knights, the top one couldn't reach because Ephraim was blocking, but this one gets the Molder, brings him down the low. There's a Merc in range. That one couldn't reach, and fortunately gets one out of F4, so it's one less enemy in our camp. We get the armor stay out of it. The next mercenary, though, he's in range of Molder, so after stalling a bit, the enemy decides to kill off Molder. So no longer do we have Berserk protection, we have to do it the old-fashioned way, but now with a more awkward positioning, and Renak is creeping away from us. Had Ephraim been further up, he would have been able to recruit Renak like a turn ago, maybe 2 turns ago, but because we have to retreat a little bit to adjust, we are now far behind on the curve. Now, some people in chat were like, why not reset when it was going a little bit wrong, just to, regain your positioning, and maybe that would have resulted in a better time overall, but I think at this point it was fine to try and continue to salvage it, because, yeah, we missed out on Renak, and as you'll see later, something else that we might have wanted. But we can still circumvent Berserk a little bit if we just make sure that Ephraim goes into the range of the Druid unequipped. Enemies will not Berserk you if you don't have a weapon equipped, and Ephraim has the fortunate property of being able to deposit his weapons at any time and then get him out again when he needs them. But we do have to hurry a little bit because enemies are coming from behind. The ideal game plan is probably for Ephraim to go ahead and start fighting there out of Berserk range while Ford stays behind and keep enemies away from Tethys. That I think is the ideal division of tasks here. Fortunately, he was not able to one-round his last Armor Knight. I think if we had a short spear from the Death Coil, we could have killed that Armor Knight. I don't think we had spent that anywhere yet. I haven't checked. It might have been spent in 13. I remember not knowing where the short spear was a bit of a concern throughout the entire run, but I don't remember where it actually got spent. Tethys dances Ephraim, and he kind of wants to go to the top right to fight the shamans there. He also wants the Pure Water to protect himself against Berserk, like that's non-negotiable. He wants to fight the enemies that are coming up here. Decides to equip the Regent Leaf, which means he'll counter the 2 Armor Knights in 1 round KO them. It means he'll likely kill the Lance Reaver Myrmidon that's lurking there, but not the Shaman that's coming towards us. But it should eliminate most enemies from that direction. Ford is using a sword to fight off these fighters. Nice one. And you can see in the top right, like, the other team has surpassed us. The Colton team, the Gluecks team, they're ahead of us now. They're smoothing ahead. I think they had, they either dealt with Berserk some other way. They didn't get Renac for some reason, I just realized. But yeah, here from for us, bottom left screen, dodges in Berserk, very nicely done. But he's not in a position to take advantage of it. If these enemy reinforcements from the Shamans were not in the way here, he could totally make it there with a Tethys Dance, as is that would put Tethys in danger. Ford could help, but he's kind of low on HP, I think. He has a low use Javelin on him. He just needs a lot of help here. Gonna get a new Javelin from the Convoy. We remember to discard this time. Probably should equip a Javelin. I think we called it out when it was happening, because now Ephraim would have to like go next to him to equip a Javelin on him. I guess we just kind of conceded that it wasn't going to be there. We just let them attack Ford instead, which I'm always in favor of personally. But now Tethys is like, well, I can't like do any helpful dances. I'm always going to be in range of something, so it's time to dodge something. And while we're deliberating this, just to keep a unit safe, look at Gluecks' team like steaming ahead, going through the Berserk range with no problems. There's like one more Berserk in range for them on the left side, but he barely cannot reach Colmore Ephraim, so they're safe. But yeah, we still haven't finished this turn. Like this is why we have plans for chapters, so we don't have to think about, okay, how do I keep myself safe? How do I keep my units alive? Because we have to constantly figure out, okay, where do I put this unit? Where do I put this unit? Where do I put this unit? But Tethys ends up getting a bunch of fateful dodges to keep herself alive. And meanwhile, Ford is just taking combats for no reason. And another Berserk comes in and misses, fortunately. That's, I think, the second Berserk that has now missed us. We still have like 1 more to go from this guy and 3 more from the next guy. And there's like 3 enemies in our camp. So instinctively, I think what I wanted to do here was move everyone to the left side and start killing enemies there. Of course, Ford can't really go anymore to the left, because if he does, he's in Berserk range, and he will prioritize Ford over Ephraim because he's lower on the deployment order. So I think we ended up deciding to have Ephraim help out Tethys a little bit and make it so she only has to dodge like 1 attack. I think she's low on HP. No, she's fine on HP. So she can, Ephraim can kill the fighter, but he kind of wants to Pure Water again for the Berserk, so it's a really tight thing. Oh, we realized that the fighter, this is actually important to point out, I think. Let me go back a little bit. So the Shaman is standing in the only spot that this 1-range fighter can attack Tethys from, and because 1-range enemies move before 2-range enemies, the fighter cannot actually attack Tethys. The Shaman is keeping her safe from the fighter. The fighter does one-hit KO her, but the Shaman does not, so Tethys is totally safe this turn. Unless one of these guys has a Javelin, but I don't think that's the case. So Ephraim Pure Waters to hopefully dodge the last Berserk use from this right side Druid. And gets the kill here. Gets a hammer for his troubles. Kills off both soldiers, which means we now have a turn off from the reinforcements from the bottom, which is good because we have more than enough reinforcements on the top to deal with. It does have a Javelin, but it doesn't matter. Tethys only had to dodge 1 out of 2 attacks. And Ford, now equipped with a Javelin, deals with a couple more Shamans. Gonna get another spectacular level up. That's actually not bad. I'll take that one. We gave him a couple stat boosters before the map, an energy ring, and I think a talisman to be slightly better off, but he's still god-awful. Fuck you, Ford. I hate everything about you. Berserk, come on, Berserk. Misses again, fortunately. Now it's fairly simple. The Druid is out of Berserk, and we can just steam ahead and have Ephraim safely bait these mages. It was still a bit of a struggle. And you can see that in the top right screen, for example, Gluecks' team is already in the throne room. They have a sleeping Ephraim for some reason from the Druid that is annoying him, but fortunately they did recruit Renak, and he is in the way of the Bishop. I actually kind of want to see what happened with their Renak recruitment real quick. Let me see if I can scout that. Okay, so the current positioning on their screen over here is that their Ephraim is going to dodge a nice Berserk here, and Renak moved over here, right? So let's see what's going on here. Ephraim dodges a Berserk, and he's in range to recruit Renak. So they go up to him, they do talk. Oh, I think they mashed the wrong button. They might have mashed B there to accidentally not recruit him. That's unfortunate. I used to think that Renak's recruitment, if you mash start, you miss him, because it skips the whole part where he says yes or no, do you want to hire me or not? And even if you have the gold, he just doesn't join you. What I've heard is apparently you can start, like just press start once, and then he gets to the yes no question. Then you press A to get him, and that's good. So if you've ever heard me say don't mash start, that is not entirely true. It's mashing B that will get you in trouble, because I think B will default it to no. So they missed Renak for a turn, but because Ephraim is cutting him off from his escape point, I think he just stands still there, or maybe runs the other way. And there you go, there's a Berserk dodge again. So you were not the only team to have to dodge a couple Berserks here. Now, because we have stabilized the situation, I have one more situation in mind from a soonish chapter, and then I want to get to the end game. Actually, there's a couple more. So I'm going to get you some couple more highlights, actually. Now, this is the point where I started playing, basically. I was assigned, / I volunteered to do chapter 15 onwards, so I'm going to try to clutch this for us. But as you can see, we're already a little bit behind. Our timer is 4 minutes behind the other teams, but they're going through the desert already. As you can see, Castle's team in the upper left has just left chapter 14. I'm in the preparations of 15. And the upper right team, Gluecks' team in the upper right, My Dart Will Go On, is already nearing Kalak with one part of their army. They're going to have Kolm do the majority of the work there, and it's going to go a little bit better than you might think. They are using Null and Renak to, I think, a little bit of a superfluous extent. I think if they just left Kolm to do most of the business there, it would have been fine. Null maybe fight some mages, but that's about all he can really optimally do. And they're like struggling a little bit to see what to do with Saleh, who is not allowed to see any combat for any of the teams, or at least not allowed to counterattack. And I'm still prepping my ass off, making 3 different saves. I need to hurry up. So Ephraim's going to do the bottom right part for everyone else, because he's by far the best unit that we have at this point. Even at level 20, I'm unable to promote, which leaves our poor Ford with the upper left part. Well, it would be poor, you know, if we didn't hate him so much. Ephraim rushes a fighter and just stand in front of him with a javelin equipped. This is because if you attack the fighter and then miss 1 out of 2, he will have healing AI go to a fort. And this is the best chance to avoid that, by fighting him on enemy phase instead. Of course, I do end up missing one of the guys here, and it ends up happening anyway. But, you know, that's just how it is. So, Kolm right now on the upper right team, My Dart Will Go On, is struggling a little bit with the 2 ranged enemies, but he'll find a way to Kalak eventually. I think we have the best Ephraim out of everyone. I know at least one other team has an Ephraim that got RNG about as good, and one team has a really bad Ephraim. I think that is 5-fanged offense that has an RNG screwed Ephraim, and that can really bite in this map and the maps coming up where Ephraim becomes even more important. Everyone, of course, went Ephraim route, and he does a lot of work regardless, but the benchmarks for one-rounding, especially for bosses, are going to go way up after this. My Dart Will Go On kind of traps Inez on the pyramid. Once the Pegasus Knight gets in front of him, he will never be able to get out, but at least he'll be able to fight the other Pegasus Knights, so that's okay, I guess. Ephraim is just camping on fort. Our Ephraim is like maybe a little bit behind on speed, and we do have a speed wing in conflict. We probably should have given him it to this point, and because of that, he is stuck with a ranger that doesn't die on enemy phase, and he might miss some other doubling benchmarks later on. But at least he can make his way to the fort, the upper fort, and kill the other troubadour, which is what he's supposed to do this turn, is kill the enemies that will not suicide on him. So it's not the worst thing in the world. 5-fanged offense is Ephraim a little bit behind on schedule, not able to make it to the fort, and can only just kind of stand there menacingly in front of the forts, but isn't able to block the reinforcements or take advantage of the terrain bonuses. My Dart Will Go On got their Ephraim on the bottom fort, and that's as fine as position as any. I see all the troubadours are dead. It should be alright. Tethys is doing her best to get Ford and Gilliam across the desert as soon as possible. Of course, the horses are being hindered by the sand, and so they cannot move as far as a mage would. But, you know, we were not nice enough to each other to give each other mages, so these will have to do. It might seem more intuitive to send the horses to the right side where they can move to their full extent, but the combat necessities to do well in those places are really much more likely to be on Ephraim and not on that unit. I think Gilliam could have probably done this job, but Ephraim isn't that fast at crossing the desert either because he only has 5 base movement. Interesting difference is that, well, first of all, look at Colm in the upper right. He's already hit Kalak once. He might have not attacked, I'm not sure, but he's just standing in front of Kalak fearlessly and mercilessly. He might get attacked by a couple Pegasus Knights, but really, who cares? I don't think she should bother with the Phantoms, but other than that, this is looking really good. I guess they're just kind of making sure that Pegasus Knights are not attracted to anyone that's like roaming the desert right now. I think Vernac is just picking up some funny items. I just want to see Colm's combat against Kalak, really. And here it is coming up. Probably after a bunch of other enemies move and do their healing AI or killing Phantoms. I guess they were trying to use the Phantoms to free Inez from his cage. That's the only thing I can think of, but that is never happening. I guess they're trying to have Null kill some Pegasus Knights in enemy phase. That's kind of dangerous. Because, you know, he gets 2-shot. What I want to see is what Colm does against Kalak. Here we go. Oh, they did wait in front of him. 2-shot. Well, 4-shot, but doubling. A 2-round KO. Absolutely insane. Gilliam is still trying to get there. Ford is still trying to get there. Colm is already basically done. He just needs to hit 2 more hits on player face, and it's just over for Kalak. Absolutely insane. And he does a reasonably good desert movement. It's not 0 move penalty like the desert, the mages in Path of Radiance. Oh, unfortunately, he misses Kalak with one of his shots. I don't think there's any way to compensate for that. I don't think Null can finish it here. I don't think Tethys can reach anyone significant. I don't think Erica can make it there. But he didn't get hit at least on enemy phase or on his phase. And Null uses Nosferatu very nicely to heal back up. Very pro play, very pro play. Gilliam at least can get through that area relatively unscathed in the upper left screen. 5-fanged offense. Gilliam will need to move like through the desert like 1 or 2 tiles at a time. But you know, once he gets there, at least he won't have to get off very far. I guess it depends on how his defense turned out. I know that Gilliam basically soloed the entire mid game for them, but Kalak hits kind of hard. Usually he doesn't double Gilliam, I believe, but I guess it depends on whether you have Garm equipped or not and how his speed turned out. I was being a little bit careful with Ford. I don't want to expose Tethys, and I also don't want to expose Ford to the Shamans while I can't afford to have a Javelin equipped. I wanted to fight the fighters with a sword, and I wanted to fight the Shamans with a Javelin, so I was ready to take a couple turns, but their ranges don't quite overlap the way I had in mind, so I'm going to take some extra turns to get there. Let me see if I can capture his combat against Kalak, because it's hilarious. Alright, first we're going to pay attention to the upper left screen where Gilliam is about to engage Kalak. Axe Reaver 16, Sword Slayer 37, but the accuracy is a bit worse. Goes with the Axe Reaver for now. Decent damage. Look at Ford now at bottom screen. Axe Reaver does a massive 9 damage, and if he gets hit, he goes down 18 damage, which is more than half the HP, so Ford is going to have to wait and chill. And at this point I was like, maybe we should send Ephraim back to help with Kalak, because we're not really going, it's not going so well. I'm having Ephraim kill the bottom left reinforcements first, because otherwise they're going to spend all their time moving towards us. So I was like, okay, I'm not routing fast anyway, reinforcements already spawned, I might as well kill here, because if you don't route the desert before these reinforcements spawns, you're just over. I think 5-fanged offense was really close to routing the desert before that happened, but didn't quite make it there. My Dart Will Go On did have reinforcements spawn as well. In a normal draft race, you can have the chapter routed by turn 7, maybe even 6 if you get very lucky, and that would stop reinforcements from turn 8. But with a SOYO, you have to be a bit slower. Anyway, I was just being patient here, bottom left screen, because I didn't think we would be able to route fast anyway, and I'd rather just get rid of the problems while they're occurring and just really avoid a reset. There was a practice round where I was having Ephraim take care of the bottom right corner as usual, and the Berserker crit him with the Devil Axe. It was like it might have been like a less than a % chance of happening, but it did. So what I wanted to do was ensure that couldn't happen and also make Valter foolproof by having Ephraim wait for Kalak to be dead, and then the person that kills Kalak drops the Hoplon Guard into the convoy so that Ephraim can pick it up. That's what I was kind of waiting for. So because I didn't want to risk like Valter critting me with his spear or his Killer Lance, I think he defaults to his spear and never really has a reason to unequip it. But he can technically use his Killer Lance, and there's probably a way you can entice him into doing it, which would kill Ephraim. Whereas a pierce from the spear, if he's not doing any crits, I wrote it down in my notes. It was like 31 attack that pierces defense. So an Ephraim at full HP at this point would never die to just a pierce alone, as long as he makes sure that he's at full health before he attacks. This does mean that like you can almost never just attack on player phase. I think I resumed my attempt at Kalak here again, but I was like, well, I can never really attack, can I? And I would just break the Axe Reaver, and I was afraid like the Axe Reaver is the best weapon against Kalak that Ephraim has as well. So can I really afford to have Ford use the Axe Reaver here? And my teammates were like, just bring the other units in. Bring in Inez, bring in Erica. have him help out, because Ford alone is doing less damage than Klaire is healing, and, you know, we're never winning that way. And as long as Klaire is, like, capable of two-shotting Ford, you can never afford to attack on player phase either. I guess you can, like, attack and then get danced and then rescue Tethys out, but that's still awful, and now you're stuck away from Klaire with a rescue Tethys. This is not good. So I'm like, okay, we'll bring over Inez. I know from experience Inez will not save a bad unit from beating Klaire by himself. Like, Inez gets two-shot as well and has bad accuracy, but at least if he hits, he does like decent damage. So maybe I was right and they were wrong. In fact, you're gonna see that they are right, and I was wrong that Inez cannot be of any help, because yeah, on his own Inez is gonna do it, but with the help of Erica and Ford, especially a very blessed Erica, we can maybe do it. But maybe Ford shouldn't have been seeing all this combat here. My Dart will go on is actually bothering to pick up the Metastone with Rennek, which is very interesting. I remember they were also saying that Colm was helpful for picking up an item on the way there. I think it was like the Worm Slayer or something, which I found very amusing. Fortunately, no one is out of the desert yet, so there's still a little bit of time for us to catch up here. Plus, we have that difference in our timer, but we are falling behind slowly. And especially now that Klaire is going to be given incentive to equip his Tomahawk, and the X Reaver is down to like 3 uses, it's not looking great for the team that's fighting Klaire. And after that, we still have Ephraim to kill Falter, whereas my Dart will go on, just finish the desert. So let's see if we can actually take down Klaire with this tag team. Inez takes the hit with the Tomahawk. He clearly prefers to attack him over Ford, probably because of the weapon triangle, like the massive amount of hits that he has on Inez over Ford. Considering using the Worm Slayer here with Ford, but decided to go with the Act Reaver again. Hit him again, didn't get hit, so now I can use Tethys' turn on Inez if I want to. I'm considering, like, my teammate were like, maybe you should sacrifice Inez for the greater good. I was like, yeah, that probably is good, but I can't guarantee that will give a better result. So I'm just going to use the turn to heal Inez and have Erica come a little bit closer. Don't want to put her in Tomahawk range, but put her close enough to where she can contribute next turn without getting Tomahawk for free, basically. I want, if Klaire is going to attack me, I want my units to counter. Inez gets another hit in. He's like 60 hit or something with the silver bow, so not great. Erica does do 8 with a killing edge. It's pretty good. So I look at the combined hit rates, and I think there was like a combination of moves that was pretty much safe to do. Whereas like I can keep going if he misses me, and if I hit me, I can back out with Tethys' help and like Ford rescuing. So this was a pretty safe play. I think Inez could go for the kill here. I'm not sure. Oh, I think we decided, okay, we'll give the kill to Ford because Ford is like full inventory. Tethys finds the warp. I was like, oh nice, that's an item I can trade over to look fancy. I could have just done the javelin, but this is way funnier. So he takes the warp, Act Reavers Klaire to death, thankfully hits, gets the Hoplon Guard, sends it to Convoy, and now Ephraim is ready to take on Valter. So we go here. I was like, the Act Reaver doesn't have enough uses left to be safe, but I think the javelin would have been perfectly fine. I should just put Ephraim next to the Shaman, equip the javelin. I think he would have won right with it. I just had to go with the Iron Lance for some reason. I was like being way too fancy here. But he takes out the Hoplon Guard, takes out the Dragon Spear for Falter later. I think he's fully healed, so he doesn't need to do anything besides wait here. The Shaman is not going to hurt him enough. He doesn't have a weapon that hits res. He has a Luna. I think. Maybe it's a Flux. It doesn't matter. Ephraim doesn't care enough about the Shaman. He should just kill the Shaman next turn. Get the Devil Axe. Get revenge on that guy. Let's move forward, kill things. He also has to kill a couple Wyverns. I think this Ephraim is so strong that he can kill with the Iron Lance, so we don't have to use the Dragon Spear here. Not that it matters. We don't need the Dragon Spear for anything else. But while we're like dawdling around with Ephraim, my Dart will go on is already in chapter 16 and making progress. And 5-fanged offense is just switching up. So Ephraim gets a big shot in with the Dragon Spear. I cannot attack here because if I do and I miss, I have to play this chapter all over again. So I have to elixir up, wait for Falter to die. Or miss me at least. And there we go. He's down. So we're out of the desert, but we have officially fallen behind, I think. We're at 220, while my Dart will go on is at 224. So I guess there's probably less than a 4-minute difference between us and them. But yeah, our lead is basically gone. There's not much of a lead left. But I've practiced this, I can do this. What we really need to capture here is 5-fanged offense's fight against Orson here. So what I want to emphasize here is the different ways you can approach this chapter, and specifically the way you use Myr. So Myr is a free unit because she is so powerful in the late game that if you don't have her, it takes a lot longer. It's probably possible to do in a race setting, but we just kind of carried over the races from older draft races, the rules from older draft races, and decided that it was more fun to have Myr be free. Specifically deal with Leon in the very late game. It's just such a big difference in a normal draft phase, which was draftable. And that's why it was kind of grandfathered into this race that Mer would be available. And even with Mer, it's still a challenging race. So I felt like this was an okay decision. But I understand why it might look weird that Mer is free. But Mer is not just good for free. She has to be trained. And there's two ways you can train her in this chapter. Either have her tag along with Ephraim, like we have been doing, so that she can just pick up kills along the way, like killing these druids and these sages. Or you can train her at the starting point against reinforcements. And some of those are good for her, like enemies with one range that she can one-shot. Like on Ephraim route, I think specifically that's like the Valkyrie and Rangers with swords. There's also some enemies that she's not that good against, like Cavaliers, where she takes 2 shots and sometimes doesn't counterattack if they have javelins. So varying degrees of success. What we did with the reinforcements is just leave Ford behind in the forest and have him get attacked over and over with no weapon equipped. And that's pretty, like, it's kind of tiring, but it's not as tiring as running away from them eternally. You can see Armor is getting attacked by like all kinds of long-range things because the enemy sees she's on low HP, and that gives her high priority, even though there's better targets for them like Ephraim. And Ephraim is fighting Orson. You have to use a Speed Wing in order to double him. Like I said before, he is a bit speed screwed in the sense that usually he does double Orson, I think, but ours didn't without the Speed Wing. But we saved Amelia's Speed Wing for this occasion, thinking either we need it on Mer or we need it on Ephraim. So we got out of this chapter relatively unscathed. And now we get to promote Ephraim and Erica, who is still free and still available. So now let's talk about Five Fangs' offense's approach. What they decided to do was leave Mer behind to fight the reinforcements and train on them, which is intuitively good, but I think in the end the incorrect move. And while Gilliam and Ephraim were assigned with, conquering the throne and beating Orson. Let's see how that went. So you can see Mer is in the hallway fighting some reinforcements, and Ephraim and Gilliam are about to cross the invisible line that causes most of the enemies on the map to move towards you and start attacking you. So they have Gilliam pick up Ephraim and bring him in there. I think it would have been better if they just walked in with both of their actions available, because this made Gilliam more vulnerable to attack for this turn. Like he's more likely to get hit by Eclipse, as ridiculous as that sounds, as well as bolting if that guy is on the map already. There's like a sage with Purge and a sage with Sleep. And if either of those hit Gilliam right now, he's in big trouble. And Ephraim just wants his turn available to start killing something. Like he just wants to kill like a sage or a druid, anything that can get in your way, basically. Looks like the reinforcements have not yet spawned. Those also spawn when you cross the invisible line. So they have a turn to drop Ephraim before the enemies spawn. And I think this rescue movement does allow Ephraim to attack Orson maybe a turn earlier, and that's why they did it. And if so, I understand, because it does mean you're around for less than a turn less on the map. So I get it. But I don't know if that was the correct play. But you'll have to make it out in the comments, I guess. But Gilliam can cancel away, only has 6 moves. So you can drop Ephraim in front of Orson, but Orson will just be able to attack Gilliam at range. And in the Ephraim route, I believe Orson has a Rune Sword and a Silver Lance. And the Silver Lance is what he usually will equip on one range because it's just so much stronger than a Rune Sword. He can kind of trick you into thinking Mer is good against him because he starts with the Rune Sword, I think. And Mer will be like, oh, I take 0 damage, get wrecked Orson, and then he just uses Silver Lance and kill Mer. That's killed one of my practice runs before. So, okay, keep killing him. I'm going to slow it down a little bit too here, because we got to see this. And you can see they get their Mer training in here, which is good. She's sort of level 10. There's not really a benchmark she needs to hit until she has to fight Leon, but... and by that I mean like final chapter Leon. I guess Morva is also important to hit some benchmarks for. So you can be pretty flexible on when you train Mer, and this is probably the best chapter to do it no matter what. Mer draws the bolting, which is fortunate for them, or the purge. He's not able to attack anyone else. I keep calling it bolting because it's a sage, but counterintuitively it is a purge. So that's good. The sleep guy will probably move towards them. And here comes Orson. He does use the Silver Lance on Ephraim, so he's fine, but their Ephraim doesn't double, so they're still stuck for a turn. And Orson, as much as we like to make fun of him in the cat fandom, he's very dodgy. They have about as much hit on each other as each other. I don't know how I was gonna say the sentence. 54 hit either way. Gilliam does do very well against the Silver Lance here, so I think they're contemplating just sending this attack, just doing 21 damage at 70 hit, which seems pretty good. But maybe doing a trade first, or like healing in front of him first. I guess they might know about the Rune Sword, and they want to bring the Sword Slayer just in case. If at least one of them probably knows. I think they have all 4 of their team members on deck here. Maybe they're considering using a Pure Water, or they're just going to go in anyway. They're really deciding about this one. But they got to decide fast, because everyone else is already in chapter 18. So they just end turn with Gilliam in front of him with the Silver Axe equipped. Always a good move with throned enemies to avoid some healing if they're still at full health. By ending your turn in front of them, they don't get to heal your first attack off, and you get to see whether you hit or miss. But this will give Orson plenty of reasons to switch to a weapon that is not a lance. The rune sword is, I believe, classified as dark magic at both 1 range and 2 range. I will never remember how magic swords work to save my life. I won't even remember proper expressions to save my life. And we got a couple more eclipses going for Ephraim because his HP is lower than Gilliam's. All good, he decides to dodge. Ephraim dodges a probably fatal purge. Unless he's pure water, then he's probably fine. Mer showing why she doesn't like 2-range combat, but at least she can get that Valkyrie kill next turn. And here comes Orson. Boom, rune sword. Boom, counter hit. And rune sword heals it back up. Big problem for Gilliam. He can't deal with a rune sword at all. And I don't think the Sword Slayer is going to solve that either. And here comes a sleep sword, or the sleep staff, and Gilliam is put to bed right where he doesn't want to be. Awful situation for him. The only person who can bail him out here is Ephraim, who's at low HP. He could crit with the Rigid Leaf. If he does, that could help, although another enemy might take over the throne. He attacks, and Ephraim gets hit on the counterattack. Put to low HP, 1 HP left, and in an even worse spot for him. Orson gets to heal up a little bit, thanks to Rune Sword and Throne Healing, and they decided to reset. Probably a good move. They were never getting out of that one alive, and you might as well save yourself the animation time. But this was officially when, unfortunately, 5-Fanged Offense fell behind far. And it's still pretty close between the Libra Bunga and 5-Fanged Offense as they make their way through the Gorgon map. Yeah, Orson was a huge struggle for them, and I remember this really taking a mental toll on their morale, especially on Castle, who had to play this chapter all over again. Okay, this time they took a much more careful approach, and they are going in with like fully loaded pure waters and everything, so they should be more prepared for what is coming. Let's ignore the other perspectives for now, because I want to highlight them in a little bit. Let's just focus on 5-Fanged Offense for a little bit. They got Ephraim preserving his pure water boost by being rescued by Ephraim so that the pure water doesn't deteriorate, and Gilliam will be able to get in further. I think he might actually be able to drop Ephraim in a spot now that is conveniently in a way to attack Orson without Gilliam being in range. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, they have 1 extra tile now because of the way they positioned them. That's a good adjustment for sure. And they pop out Gilliam a little bit so that now Orson is forced to attack Ephraim at 1 range. And Ephraim still won't double, he still won't be accurate, but at least, hopefully, Gilliam will be the one that brought him into position to get to seize the turn earlier. I know where I was going with that one. So Ephraim fights, and unfortunately we get a double miss here. And every turn that these people miss each other, specifically that they miss Orson, is a turn where the sages get closer. They will threaten Gilliam and Ephraim with their long-range assaults. They will sleep staff. So yeah, Ephraim, I think he's now up against a rune sword. And he has to equip the Regent Leaf to deal with Orson, which means he doesn't get to use a javelin, so all the druids are taking free pot shots at him. I think the druids have either Luna or Flux, like a mix of those. Luna, not a big problem for Ephraim to dodge. There's like a chance he gets hit, I guess, but most of the time he should have like 0 hit or close to it. Flux is a bigger problem if his pure water deteriorates, but it should be fine for the most part. I think what makes this like so annoying to play for them is that they have to wait through these long enemy phases to see like a single result against Orson. And every time they miss, they have to see this all over again. Like they get to see like Mur level ups. Oh, and Ephraim died. Oh, I didn't even realize it was in lethal range. So that's the second time they have to reset Orson. Really unfortunate for them. If they had a better Ephraim with like the speed to double, this becomes a much lower issue, like much less of an issue, because they just get to kill him so much faster and they have to deal with so much less of this bullshit. Anyway, let's highlight the late game for the other contestants here. So Darkling Woods chapter 20 is where Gluecks' team is right now, upper right screen. And this is really a make or break chapter for the race, because it can be done very quickly, but if you mess up even a little bit, you lose so much time. Might have to reset, might run out of Dragonstone uses, Morpha might kill one of your carries, might kill Mur. And this is the reason that Cyrene is free, so that to make the chapter a lot faster. I think for SOYO, we could have not grandfathered in the Cyrene free rule that is really a carryover from the normal draft race rules, where the teams that are relying on Seth and Franz just cannot compete with the teams that have Vanessa and Cormac in this chapter, and they have to draft Cyrene, and one team will go without, of course, if she's draftable. So she was free, but it was nice because it made this chapter a lot more forgiving too. But I could totally see a race happening where she's not free. The strategy is usually some kind of variation of Cyrene carries Ephraim to the throne, or to the gate where Morpha is, and kills her. If you have a flyer, they can assist in some way, like they can be the one carrying them over. You of course have Tethys available to accelerate this process a little bit. Want to make sure you pure water up, which they're doing very properly. I'm going to pay attention to who my dart will go on first, because they're having a rough time of it, but you can like cast a side eye to deliver a bunga screen in the bottom left to make sure you catch what's going on there. So they move Cyrene one space above the mountain, as you can see, and this is one of those little things that can go very wrong if you do it incorrectly. There is a Gorgon with stone that can reach Cyrene from there, and if you put her one space below, she cannot. It is tempting to move Cyrene closer, like she can also go one to the left from the mountain, and that will enable more options on where you position her afterwards. It's pretty hard to get Ephraim exactly in the spot you want him to, and Kanto Cyrene to a spot where she cannot be attacked by Morva. You want Ephraim to end up right in front of Morva, so that he counters with the Sigmund and just kills Morva as soon as possible, so you can seize on the very next turn. So I understand why they wanted to do this, and I think we put our Cyrene in a different spot. Let's move on to, let me see, what happens first here. Yeah, the stone happens first, so my dart will go on, stones them, unfortunately. I've heard it was like a 50 hit that they got hit by, very unfortunate. But now we're considering going to that spot too. It's like, oh, hold up, that's in stone range. I think I want to go to the mountain or one left of it. I'm counting tiles again. I practiced it like a million times, but I want to be sure. So poop Cyrene there and have Myr tag along. I think they also have a different positioning for Myr that does something different. I believe what my positioning with Myr does here is it stops one of the whites from reaching Cyrene and has them suicide on Myr instead, which seems better to me, but they had a reason for doing it the other way around that I'm not quite aware of. Yeah, she goes like one space further back. The strategy that I'm employing that allows me to go on a mountain here is that this allows Cyrene to drop Ephraim at 2 range from Morva using a 2 range weapon like the javelin, spear, or short spear, and then Myr can come in for the finishing blow afterwards. Our Myr got the boots from the desert. I'm not sure if theirs did. I think they did. No, they didn't, I think. I think only the team with all the thieves picked up the boots as well, as we did. So the idea is that Ephraim weakens Morva with a ranged attack on enemy phase, and then Myr comes in with a kill. And we're kind of trying to math out whether we get that kill. And my dart will go on. Unfortunately, gets hit by another stone for the second time, unfortunately. Well, we drop Ephraim down in front of Morva. Sorry, it's a little bit chaotic. And I wanted to use the short spear or the spear because they're strong enough to like significantly weaken him. I didn't think the javelin would be enough, but I wanted to try anyway. And if not, we have to take the extra turn almost no matter what happens. And what this also allows you to do is Kanto Myr or Kanto Cyrene one space down after dropping Ephraim, which puts her in a much safer position so that you can preserve her for the final chapter and also save a bunch of time there. So now Ephraim is in position in front of Morva. Hit him a couple times with the javelin, but for not a whole lot of damage. Rief doesn't get to kill Cyrene because of the pure water boost, and Cyrene dodges a couple gargoyle hits to, I think, secure her safety for the next turn. Of course, there's going to be another enemy phase for her to survive because Ephraim has to be the one finishing off Morva, unless Myr can do it, but I don't think Myr can do it from here. Check the damage on Myr. She does 49 out of 52 damage. If we had the short spear or the spear, would have done it, but we can't. Instead, we put the Sigmund in front of there and deliberate a little bit. And we decide to do it in the end. Cyrene is positioned in that spot again. For my dart will go on. In range of the stone. Hopefully she dodges this time. I don't remember how many they had to dodge before they got through. So I'm not acting up here. I actually don't know if she's gonna get hit by the stone again. We have to go through a couple Myr levels first. We end up parking Ephraim in front of Morva. It's kind of aggravating that the Stone Gorgon is one of the last to move on its enemy phase. You would love to see that result before you have to watch all the other results, because if she gets stoned, you can just reset. And there's a stone, and it hits again. So you have to reset another time, the third time. So now we are officially ahead. The difference between our times is like 2 minutes-ish. It's hard to math on the fly. Morva does a massive hit on Ephraim. But we know he doesn't die because he's pure watered up. These moguls will never hurt him as long as he has like any amount of pure water. I don't think even the Cyclops could kill him, but I might be wrong on that. We do have a battle forecast mod on for this portion, so you can see. But for the most part, he is safe. This is what the Angelic Robe is like so crucial for. And Cyrene fled to the bottom of the screen, out of range of most enemies, to allow us to preserve her for the final chapter. And so we go to the final chapter. And it's looking like everything is just peachy. It's very funny. We were considering putting stat boosters on Cyrene to make it more likely to have this scenario happen and also have it pay off, because Cyrene can survive this more reliably if she has like Angelic Robe or Draco Shield or more levels in the Gorgonek chapter. And Pyrope especially was like an advocate for doing this, maybe somewhat jokingly, but it was interesting. Just setting up Cyrene's inventory here to make sure that she can get the kills she needs to. We still have the spear that was dropped just this last chapter that I can do. I just remembered that, or my teammate just remembered that. Guess it's from Ephraim. Cyrene has to drop, or she doesn't have to drop anyone across the gap in the middle of the chapter, but she does have to take care of a white that would block Myr from reaching Leon as soon as possible. If Myr is not assisted in this chapter, then you have to go through the sides to, like, if you don't have a flyer to assist Myr, you have to bring in Ephraim basically to do it for her. That's the big dilemma here. So, but the strategy is roughly what you would see in a normal draft race with a 10 move carry or an 8 move carry like Vanessa or Cormag. Fly through the middle, but instead of those carries, you use Cyrene. Cyrene is a lot more fragile though. She cannot just bunga in there and get all the kills she needs and dodge all the attacks. There are like, I want to say it's like 3 or 4 attacks that Cyrene will have to face that can all result in Cyrene dying, and if she dies to those attacks, then she cannot help kill that middle white. He's at the top of the screen right now. We have a couple more Myr level ups to go through. And once that guy's dead though, Myr just has access to Cyrene. You do have to be, or to Leon. You do have to be very precise on where you put Myr though, because if you put her in the wrong spot, it's so easy to get blocked or hit by stone. You want to be in a spot where enemies are not tempted to attack you at range, in a spot that blocks your access to Leon is basically the gist of it. Myr has level 20, just 20 strength and 19 speed, which is insane. I don't remember ever having such a fast Myr before. I don't think it makes a difference because Leon's speed is very low and everything else just gets one shot, but it was very amusing. Anyway, time to watch me doubt myself on where to go. Cyrene's move I was very confident on. As you can see, you just have to kill that white, get him out of the way, and then Myr, again, as I'm watching this, I'm like having anxiety about whether this was the right spot or not, but this looks correct. Not in a spot in front of the white, that would get her blocked. She can't get to kill herself, but Cyrene needs to survive here. We got hit once, and Myr takes a guy out. There's like a bow guy and a shadow shot left, I think. Shadow shot hits Myr, hits Cyrene, 8 HP left, 9 HP left. Oh, the bow guy misses her, but she would have lived. He did 8 damage to her 9 HP, so as Pyrope was rightfully pointing out, those levels on Cyrene actually do pay off, because now Cyrene can come in. And another idea by a teammate of mine, use the Brave Lance to kill the white so that she doesn't get countered by a Killing Edge. And now Myr is free to take on Leon. Doesn't get the crit, unfortunately, so Leon still gets an enemy phase. And we have to watch a couple of enemies try to kill Cyrene very spitefully, as she has outmaneuvered them and allowed Myr to perform optimally. But eventually Leon will have to move, and he can only attack Cyrene, or only attack Myr. I don't know why I'm mixing up these two different units, just because they both have wings. There we go, Leon is dead. Long live the king. Here comes the Demon King. And unfortunately, because Cyrene died, my order of units is messed up. Myr is supposed to end up in a spot where she can attack the Demon King on turn 1. But because Cyrene is dead, I think she's moved up 1 in deployment order. She's supposed to be number 6, not number 5. And we don't get the 9% crit on the Demon King, so we'll have to probably play out this entire turn and this enemy phase where the Demon King summons a bunch of enemies. But we got to start with this 100 hit, 45 damage attack. Because Erica and Ephraim are both so good, they can both contribute. Ephraim even doubles with the Siegmund, getting 56 damage in. I'm not sure if Erica can finish off from here. I don't believe she can. Normally, if you don't really train Erica, she ends up almost exactly getting one-shot by the Demon King, unfortunately. And, you know, sometimes she can finish him off, sure, but are you willing to risk it and having to replay the final chapter again if she misses? Well, it turns out ours can survive, but she doesn't kill, so I decide, let's not do it. And then some of my teammates were like daring me, like, hey, bring Ford in there. So I was like, alright, I'll move forward, fine. So I'll wait. I have to watch the summoning no matter what. Now I do have 100% guaranteed lethal with Myr here to finish off the Demon King and just end it right there. You can see that my dart will go on is not far behind. They did the exact same maneuver with Cyrene, from what I can tell. And really, without as badly as their Chapter 20 win, I'm really impressed that they've made it this close. But I have Ford take out the Fadafnir from the convoy, have Tethys dance for Ford to allow Ford to do the finishing blow. Unfortunately, of course, he doesn't double because he's bad. So I'm gonna have Erica weaken for him, I think. Because, you know, it's kind of close. It's kind of cringe. If they got the crit here, that would be one thing. Attack the Demon King at the exact same time. And their mirror does crit. So they're now killing ahead of us. But the timer's still in our favor. And as Erica weakens Demon King and eats a Demon Light, we do have to kill within like a minute to still be ahead of them. So let's bring in Ford for the kill. After everything is done for us, surely you can do this one more thing. Brings in Vidafnir, misses the 76. But of course he does. Now he gets crit, right? 2% crit always happens. No, that does not happen. The Demon King does not put Ford out of his mercy. He's got to suffer more and make us suffer more through his suffering. Alright, we'll kill him with Myr. Fine. It is what it is. So, as we kill the Demon King, our final time turns out to be 3:02:37. Slightly ahead of my dart will go on. Now that might be a big difference in a normal draft race, where it's all about who gets first place, who gets second place, who gets third place, basically. But this is part of a longer series of draft races. This is only the first of 3, perhaps even 4 races, depending on how you look at it. There's going to be an FE9 SOYO race coming up next, November 9th from the top of my head. I hope I said that right. And at that time, we will also be racing the same method, you know, with relay and SOYO and everything. And the times will be aggregates, which means really we only gained like half a minute, maybe a minute over my dart will go on, and they can certainly make up for it. 5-fanged offense, similarly, sure, they might only be in chapter 16 as I'm like, you know, going over this, but they can certainly still clutch the win too, like half an hour, that's like one Path of Radiance enemy phase, right? I'm saying half an hour because I think that's roughly the amount of time it took them for them. I think it's from here to endgame. Unfortunately, their Gilliam died in this struggle, but at least Ephraim is going through here, and he's gonna make it, trust me. Nothing is set in stone yet. Everything can still change. There's still gonna be more draft racing coming up, and I can't wait to have you all there to watch it with me, or you know, play along with me, or cheer me on, or hate on Ford with me. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the recap. Let me know, and I will see you next time.